hope it's going to work. Oh, hi. Hello, here we are. Welcome to Are You Sitting Comfortably? Family Sagas. Very exciting. I'm going to invite Rebecca Fletcher to join me and we can get started. I'm hoping you can see me because it's quite dark where I am. So bring my face really close to the screen if it gets really dark. So please let me know on here. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Look terribly glamorous.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing my very best this evening. I've even got in tribute to the light years tonight, my gin and it. So I'm feeling very villy.
Oh gosh, you always have the best drinks and I just have boring old water.
I do feel a bit bad. It's a Monday night. Normally not drink in hand on a Monday night, but it's a special occasion.
Exactly. It's the Cazalets. You have to honour them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
right.
Welcome everybody.
What have we got in store? Hit me.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to start with the wild card first, and then we'll move on to the light years, and then our special guest will join us. So tonight, our wild card is The Mirror and the Palette. Sorry, everyone, I know it's backwards. I do apologise. This is a book by Australian, London-based art critic Jennifer Higgie. It's a story of rebellion, revolution, and resilience. It's 500 years of women's self-portraits. Now, it's a really special one, this one, because basically art history has been heavily dominated by men and male art critics, art historians. The art that they've tended to write about has been about white men, and it's very much about white men taking center stage. What Jennifer Higgie does in her compelling new book is that she gives us the bravery, ingenuity, and skill that many female artists have had through the centuries, but have had to exemplify and manifest it against all the odds. Jennifer is one of the most respected art critics in the business today. She's been a judge for both the Paul Hamlyn Award and the Turner Prize. And this is a beautiful book on navigating female self-portraiture over the course of 500 years. So the idea came from Jennifer posting a portrait or work of art to mark the birth of a woman artist every day for a year. And she came up with this beautiful idea that hardly anybody knew who these women were and what they'd achieved. And this is really the story of extraordinary women from the 16th century all the way through to the 20th century. And it looks at how their representation of themselves reveals much about the times that they lived in. Most of them are women who you may well have heard of, but there are others which I had never heard of, to my absolute shame. I'm not at all an art buff, and I feel that this book is such a gentle touch on it. You don't have to know anything about art to enjoy this. It's a cracker. There's a bit on a lady called Anguissola. There's Artemisia Gentileschi. There's the friend and perhaps lover of Toulouse-Lautrec, Susan Valadon, who actually he changed her name. With Toulouse-Lautrec made her change her name from Maria to Suzanne. There's the American artist Alice Neal, Gwen John, Nora Hasten, Lenora Carrington, Frida Kahlo. This is an absolute gem. It tells their stories, and it tells that very nuanced story of what it means to be a woman as an artist. So about the choices they made, the self-exploration, identity, personal freedoms, their expression, and it's all about their fight to put themselves out there. For me, it is just a wonderful exploration of those stories. And again, as I will say again, a joyous, light touch. I mean, you really don't need to know anything about art to love these stories about these women. It fits so beautifully with our special guests this evening. I just wanted to read a quote. I mean, this for me just encapsulates what this book is really about. We navigate the world from inside our bodies. However extroverted, our interior worlds are the ones we're most familiar with, a space of ideas, plans, and non sequiturs, reveries, dreams, and unconscious prompts that jostle like a crowd at a football match for attention. It's a wonder anyone can communicate, even with a sliver of complexity of it all. It's a startling thought that despite our preoccupation with how we appear, we don't ever, if we don't want to, have to look at ourselves, we are at liberty to avoid mirrors. Now, this book is all about the women not avoiding the mirrors. It takes in the most wonderful story about a woman called Catharina Hemerson, who was a 16th century Flemish Renaissance artist, and she was the first person of any gender to depict themselves at work. Now, an extraordinary story of how she put herself out there. This was at a time when women were prevented from expressing themselves as artists. They couldn't join guilds or life classes to draw. They couldn't get on a scaffold to paint like their male counterparts. Law, religion, family pressures, public disapproval, they were all barriers. And yet they still explored their work on canvas with mirror and palette. And this is it's just heaven, absolute heaven. It's a book to dive in and out of, absolutely joyous. And I recommend it to anybody who's got any interest in how painting and how art has inspired so much more than just work on a canvas. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful book. I think it's just a really refreshing take on the centuries of male art dominating and male art critics and art historians too.
But it's also, I found it just terrifying that I couldn't name that many female artists actually. And you think, oh, I know a little bit about art. No, it's all men. And it was frightening to realise that. So it is a really important book actually, and so beautifully.
It is. It's so beautifully written. It really explores that idea of women creating against all the odds.
Yes, and but they can't help it. They have to.
Exactly. And a lot of what we'll talk about tonight in Family Sagas is really the idea of having to put aside your sense of identity as a woman in a family.
Yes.
And they managed to do all of that and become brilliant, beautiful artists who are only just really being not discovered, but certainly looked into at this time. Yeah. So I absolutely salute Jennifer Higgie for this absolutely beautifully written book, which again, you don't have to be an art buff to love this. It's a story of women and a story of how we are very good at manifesting and exemplifying and doing against all the odds. It's a fantastic book, a really wonderful feminist read, actually.
Yeah, I agree, really. Particularly leading on beautifully to our Cazalet Chronicles. And I was reading a lovely quote from Elizabeth Jane Howard about being married to Kingsley Amis. And she says that he was not the sort of man to boil an egg, if you know what I mean. And that she blamed so much of her lack of work on him, which is such a lovely link to that book, that women are fighting against the odds, fighting against the family and all the domesticity to actually have their art produced. It's so difficult.
Absolutely. And it's that idea that art is a reflection of you, whether that's writing or painting or music or, these are reflections of women in their time. And the Cazalet Chronicles, for me, is that wonderful sort of multi-generational layered book. I mean, I haven't got the prettiest version. I know there's an absolutely gorgeous, I think it's a Vintage who published an absolutely beautiful set of books which have come out. Now, this is the first one of 5. And if you don't know the Cazalet Chronicles, let me just tell you now, this is like Succession before Succession was even a thing. Yes. If you love that, comparison, you will love this, honestly. Yes. The Light Years is the first, and it introduces the reader to the Cazalet family, who are a sprawling, sort of upper middle class family, all with very different agendas and very different outlooks on life. It's summer of 1937, and they're all congregating at the Brig and Duchy, who are William and Kitty, the parents. They're congregating at the family home, which is called Home Place, which is in the heart of Sussex. And everyone comes together for this summer, as they do every summer. And there's a little lovely Mary Wesley link to that. If you were with us for our last one, there's a lovely sort of Mary Wesley link there. Yeah. It's the idea that tradition is that you come together for the summer. And Rachel, their unmarried daughter, still lives with them. And she just welcomes... she welcomes everyone in, but nothing is ever as it first appears, as is always the case with families. So Hugh, one of the brothers, is very haunted by the Great War. You have handsome Edward, who is a dangerous coward. Don't get me started on Edward.
The love to hate.
He flips between wife and mistress. And then there's Rupert, who's the youngest brother, who gave up his dream of being an artist to work in this family firm, which is a wood firm. And he gives his sort of increasingly demanding Zoe the life she wanted or not. Yeah, I'm open to ideas on that.
But she's not one of them.
No, not at all. None of them can sort of embrace happiness in quite the way that they would like to. This is a really fantastic first book of country house drama, affairs, the arrogance, flightiness of youth, siblings, lovers, and you get their children speaking too through it. So there are absolutely wonderful characters, Louise and Lydia and Teddy, who are Edward and Billy's children. You've got Polly and I'm going to get them wrong.
Clary.
Polly.
We have wonderful
Clary, Neville. And they are, all the children speak in it too, as do some of the servants, which is absolutely brilliant too, because you get that sort of very upstairs, downstairs feel to it.
Unlike Mary.
I couldn't love this series more. I feel with the Cazalets that you just get such a layered story because they all have such different perspectives. And there's just so many wonderful asides in it. You have this sort of family life with chickenpox and sibling rivalry, but at the same time they're also testing out gas masks because it's the war, and they're all trying to find happiness, contentment, a sense of calm in a really turbulent time.
It's that special summer that so many of us have in our own memories. There's always one special summer that you always come back to, and very similar to Mary Wesley with the chamomile lawn. And it feels like it will be their last summer, with the rumblings of war in the background and the brothers discussing signing up again and what will happen to the family business, and the children becoming scared and frightened, and some of them thinking, fantastic, it means they don't need to go back to boarding school. It's that one precious summer that you're allowed to join in.
Exactly. And one of the things that I really love about Elizabeth Jane Howard's writing is there's no saccharine. You see the family, warts and all. So you've got Clary, who hates stepmother Zoe and makes her life a misery. You've got Rachel, who is in love with half-Jewish Sid, a woman. You have the perspective in this is absolutely brilliant. So there's feminism, there's fidelity, there's a hint of abuse, there's inappropriate behaviour.
Both
extraordinary
as well. This sort of, you always think, was it just rife in those times and nobody talked about it? These two female authors much later, but it happened to her, didn't it, with her father?
It did. And in Slipstream, her autobiography, she talks of how Louise is her character, in the Cazalet Chronicles. And I find that really interesting because Louise is my least favourite character in the whole
even though
story.
The amount of humour she brings with all her dramatic lying on the swing with hand on head and reciting Shakespeare so her husband will be impressed when she's older. Oh, I love her.
I love that, but she's the exact, she's that exact girl of the time who was sort of governess taught, who had to impress, like Billy, her mum did, becoming, like being the woman that she was expected to be, and not really being allowed to have a brain. I think there's a wonderful quote in it. I think it's, I can't remember if it's Billy that says it, but I think it's women are perfectly capable of thought. They simply have different things to think about. Oh, it's the Duchy that says that. They simply have different things to think about. And it's that idea that these women, all of the women in it, want more. They want more than that's been given to them. And their husbands, the only one that for me, well, actually there are two. So Hugh gives it to Sybil, his wife, a lot more. He is very generous with himself. But equally, they don't talk.
No,
because they
and
can't.
you
Because
know that
that wasn't a lexicon of the time to
no,
talk about things.
absolutely. And she keeps saying how much more they could achieve were they able to say, actually, I don't want to go to the theatre tonight. I do have a headache. Let's just go to bed. And they both want to, but both of them worry that the other one does want to go to the theatre. So they end up going to the theatre. You think, just talk to each other. Communication.
I know.
Oh,
But this is so beautiful because the dynamics are razor sharp. Howard has just got that beautiful ability to see how a story can be taken. There's not a lot of action, really. It's all in their heads. And that, to me, is the greatest sort of relationship writing, because we're seeing everything from different perspectives. And she allows the reader to make up their mind about the characters.
yes.
For me, Clary will always be my favourite. The girl who wants to be writer, the sort of the passion that she has, the sort of hot-headed temper
Yes.
of trying to carve out a place for herself in a very defined family.
Yeah, absolutely. With signs of beauty, but not yet there. So she's actually not rated particularly much, even though she is clearly going to be an extraordinary writer.
And she is the brains. She's absolutely the brains. If Polly is the kindness and the caring,
and Louise
Clary
is the beauty.
brains.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Louise
a wonderful
is the beauty
collection of
and the debutante.
Yes.
An absolutely fantastic collection of characters who all bring that sort of wonderful story together. And Home Place is a place I will go back to time and time again.
Yes.
It's the book. This is a series of books that I have recommended to so many people, and I'm afraid to say it. I'm going to say it. This is terrible. I always judge a good, if I've recommended it and the person hates it, I'm not sure we can be friends.
It's a bit like
terrible to say
or not. No, I totally agree.
It's just, they are brilliant, and there's such an effortless grace with the way she puts words on a page, and she obviously just had an exceptional eye for observation and wit and humour. So this isn't all serious at all. Just, there's a lot of humour and real sort of family feeling in it, I think.
Which leads us extremely beautifully, well done, to our special guest. You explain and I will invite her on.
I'm so excited about our special guest. So our last book of this month is The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelson. I hate doing this because it's so upside downy. This is the extraordinary fifth novel from Charlotte Mendelson. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello.
Who joins us tonight for
Hello.
Hello. Charlotte has the most incredible back catalogue of novels, which has seen her shortlisted for the Man Booker, the Woman's Prize, the Orange Prize. She has won the Book of the Year in the Observer, Guardian, Sunday Times, New Statesman and Spectator. She's won the Somerset Maugham Award and the John Llewellyn Rhys Prize. Earning its place this year on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist, The Exhibitionist shines a spotlight on art, marriage, ego, family dynamics and power. We meet the Hanrahan family with patriarch Ray, who's a famous artist and notorious egoist. He's the worst narcissist you can imagine. And it prepares for a momentous weekend where he will show the first art he's exhibited in decades. Will this be his moment? That is the question. But three children wait in the wings: the beautifully shy stepson, Patrick, insecure Jess, Ray's champion and real general dog's body, Leah, all with their own decisions to make that weekend. And then there's Ray's beautiful and selfless wife, Lucia, who's also an artist, but teetering on the verge of sea change. And we carry on with that journey with her. Can she step back from the roles as wife and mother to rediscover her sense of identity before her secrets consume her? It's sad, it's funny. Above all, it's a novel which explores family from everyone's perspective, and Charlotte's writing is deeply perceptive and super sharp. It's a pressure cooker of a tale of personal freedoms, the intricacy of our closest relationships, and the roles that we inhabit in the place we call home. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello. Yes, it's all true. Everything you said is completely true.
Excellent news.
Well
Excellent.
done. Yeah.
I loved it, Charlotte, from the moment that I started it. It's one of those books which it was a 24-hour. I couldn't bear to put it down, if only to know what Lucia's big decision might be. It's so voyeuristic. It's like a sort of boiling pot of water that you're waiting to bubble over, like the pasta's just gone. It's amazing. Claustrophobic to the extreme. And it's a real novel of sort of middle-class domestic realism. What is it? I mean, you've written about messy family dramas before, but what is it that pulls you back to that interesting dynamic between families?
It's funny you say that, because I sometimes think, should I try and stop writing about family? And then I realize it's the thing I'm most interested in. You know, I think we're all as we are because of the family we came from, you know, whether we're rebelling against it or sort of conforming to it. And families are so weird. You know, it's such a weird idea that you get sort of plopped into this, you know, a flat or a house with three or however many people that you might be genetically related to, and then just everyone expects you to get on. I mean, that's such a nutty idea. So I suppose I think the family is the microcosm of everything I love writing about, which is people having secrets, people pretending to be what they're not really, people trying to hide the truth from everyone around them who thinks they know them better. And in the family, there are such high stakes because, you know, you mustn't let people down. You mustn't ruin the whole thing. You mustn't ruin the story of what your family's like. So also, families can be so weird. I just think it messes so many people up, which obviously makes things interesting. Yeah.
It does. Do you think that partly it's a novelist's greatest gift to be really nosy, and therefore that sort of nosiness means that you want to deep dive into how these relationships coexist?
Yeah, I mean, you are not the first person to have suggested that I am perhaps a bit too curious about other people.
Curious is a much better word.
Curious is a good word. No, I'm incredibly interested in how people became the people they are, and I always want to know the sort of juicy family background because I think it explains us. You know, when I was a publisher, which I was for 20 years, really my only real contribution to the world of work psychology was, well, my only contribution was I had a theory we should have parents' evening, and once a year everyone's parents or siblings should come in and we could all go, that's right.
how.
Yeah. So that's basically my guiding principle is their family is probably weird.
I think that's fair. And you don't get any weirder than the Hanrahans. I mean, Ray is, he's so horrid.
He's horrible.
So horrid.
He's horrible. He's an arse, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Did you find it stressful to write about him because he's so stressful to read? Did it make you angry?
No, it's funny. People say that. It doesn't make me angry because he is a portrait of a particular kind of person. I think, you know, actually, I feel more angry that people don't understand why someone like Lucia would stay married to him for a long time. You know, I think, and, you know, I was listening to what you were saying about the book about women artists, and oh my God, the stories of, you know, women who have had to suppress their creativity or their success because of their partner. You know, it's very hard to escape someone like Ray. They're charismatic,
yes,
and funny, and they can be sexy or they can be charming. So how are you supposed to get away from them?
And I think when you lose that sense of self too, you become very vulnerable to somebody else's bigger charisma.
That's completely true. I'm really glad you said that. I think it's funny because so many people either have said, you know, oh, it's such fun, I loved reading it, or oh my God, I felt so angry reading it. And I think, but actually it's just a heartbreaking portrait of emotional abuse and sexiness. You know, it's like, of course she can't leave him. And of course something happens, you know, because exactly he's made her think she isn't really worthy of anyone.
Yeah. And I think that's what I find so interesting. You know, I read that you had been to the studio, Barbara Hepworth's studio, and I know that obviously this is entirely a work of fiction, Charlotte.
Entirely.
Did you think to yourself that dynamic between two artists being in a couple was so interesting that you had to explore that more?
Yes, I suppose it wasn't. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it when I went to the studio. The studio really was one of the sparks for making Lucia a sculptor, because basically I just envy people whose jobs involve them getting to play with delicious clay and string and sticks. You know, my job involves sitting at a laptop. So it's like that. But yes, the thing is that I like writing about difficult people and their families. So the idea of two artists is obviously particularly interesting, because that kind of ups the stakes. It makes it harder for Lucia to be successful openly. If Lucia was an accountant, then Ray probably wouldn't care that she'd just got a small promotion. Whereas if Ray thinks it somehow impinges on him, he's going to be impossible, which he is.
And there's that sort of wonderful, Lucy is the prime example of that sort of push and pull of what we want to be, what we can be, and what we end up being. I found that particularly highlighted, the sort of creative wasteland that domesticity gives us. And she is an embodiment of that she almost has had to put everything aside that she feels about herself and her sense of identity in order to bring up the family and to be something beautiful on Ray's arm.
It's funny. It's interesting you think of her as beautiful. I don't really think of her as beautiful. Ray, I suppose maybe because she doesn't think of herself as beautiful. She's sort of not decorative. She's a bit too cross to be decorative. But I think, yeah, you're right. She's had to sort of give up everything. And even though she's been trying and trying, it's really hard to create if you think, oh God, you know, what's Ray gonna say? You see what I mean? So, no, you're completely right. So much of it is to do with her self-esteem, I think. It's not, oh, Ray is really difficult, full stop. It's that he's made her believe his version of her.
Yes, absolutely. But he's also made the children into the versions he needs them to be, which is also that sort of holding in, that sort of tightness of control.
Yeah, exactly. And it was lovely hearing you talking about the Cazalets. I think you're so spot on about so much of it. I adore those books too, really passionately. And I agree with you. I'm not sure I could like someone who didn't like them. And
they're my desert island books for sure. I could read them again and again.
They're so wonderful. But when I wrote Patrick, actually, I was thinking a little bit. I've suddenly forgotten his name. Is it Christopher?
Yes.
There's a very sweet, very troubled boy.
Very sensitive.
Very sensitive, and he lives in a sort of hut. And I was thinking of Christopher a bit when I was writing Patrick, because I just think to be that sort of odd person who can't fit in, you have to have been made to feel that, you know. So, and yes, and I adore Elizabeth Jane Howard because of how incredibly insightful she is about family relationships and difficult people and people who sort of hurry around them trying to, you know, cheer them up. Also, I'm glad you mentioned Slipstream. I love Slipstream. I just think
Such a good book.
But it's so, you sort of want to go, oh my God, Elizabeth, you know, don't tell them about the hemorrhoids, but then just do. Just do.
It's so
just
brilliant.
say
but
everything.
Again, it's that sort of
Wow.
It's not holding anything back.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. That's what I found with the Exhibitionist, Charlotte. You don't hold anything back.
No.
You give us everybody, warts and all, and they're sort of, some of them are more likable than others, but that's people and family. And I felt that in this, we just see all the struggles of inhabiting roles and feeling. Was it always your intention to sort of keep that sort of thwarted ambition inside? Because so many of them have it.
I think it's not so much ambition. It's ambition for Lucia. Lucia's had to pretend she's not ambitious, but she is. It's more that they all are longing for some kind of escape. They want to get away from Ray. And it's funny, I suppose it is warts and all, because I sort of don't really see what the point of writing idealized people is. You know, I've certainly known people like Ray. I've known people like all of those people. I think that one of the things that's so interesting about writing fiction is you can write people from the inside out. So you can write their kind of ungallant, unglamorous, unpleasant, true thoughts, and then how they're trying to present themselves differently to other people. You know, it's sort of a privilege, and it's sort of a consequence of being nosy, as you say, that you can basically make it up, and then you do know the answer.
That's true. That is true. I mean, I you know, I think we're so drawn to family sagas for all those reasons. Do you think it's because we're seeking to sort of benchmark ourselves, that somehow the Hanrahan family on the whole are probably a lot worse than a lot of people's families, but we want to benchmark that because it's something comforting to think, well, at least it's not as bad as them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it like that. I think it's more that I wanted to speak to the people who knew what I'm talking about. You know, the people who know a Ray or who are a Patrick or whatever. You know, I wanted to say, of course you haven't left yet, but you still maybe can, you know.
Yes.
Is Lucia your baby in the novel? Is she the one that you gravitate to, that you're trying to help? Or did it start with Ray and it spread from there?
That's interesting. I think I've always wanted to write about someone like Ray, a narcissist like Ray.
Yeah.
But Lucia came out of, yes, I suppose it was Ray first, and then it was, so what would it be like to be his wife?
Yes.
But yes, Lucia has my heart. Lucia is the one who I suppose I most feel for, because she's the one who's trying to keep everything going.
Yes.
I mean, fiction is often so deeply personal to the writer as it's being written, and this novel is very weighty emotionally. There's a good deal. I would hazard a guess that there's a good deal of your own feeling and your own experience in this. Do you think, as writers, we write those thoughts and emotions because we find it harder to share that in real life?
Yes.
Good thought.
Yes, I do. I think, you know, I'm a funny mixture of very private, and then I write novels, which are incredibly exposing and weird. You know, so I suppose so, but it's also, I think, an act of sort of, you know, excavation. You're sort of trying to work out what you feel about something. You're trying to see the truth of people, and that sounds sort of grand, but I think it is a sort of investigation into situations or characters or relationships. You know, you're wondering what it is about them.
I mean, that's where, for me, I found, I'd read your book and then I went to read Jennifer Higgie's book, and it's that idea of the mirror as it's a reflection of you. It's and to be able to capture that in words or on a canvas is really an expression of how you feel about yourself too.
I think that's true. Lucia's work is so, it's very big, takes up a lot of space, which is, I suppose, kind of unfortunate, because Ray would have been so happy if she was, you know, a miniaturist.
But isn't that the beautiful juxtaposition that in real life she takes up so little space in all of their lives, but her work is somehow that expression of big that she can't give.
She can't, and the thing is, she can't help it. That's how it happens. You know what? I suddenly thought Ray is probably the sort of person who'd love it if her job was making kind of very small dolls. All kind of pressed flower arrangements. But, you know, bad luck
Absolutely.
Ray. Yeah. Doesn't like that.
Oh, now, Charlotte, would you be happy to read us a little bit so that our listeners tonight can hear you in your own words?
Well, I was thinking what to read, and I thought I'd read a bit that I actually haven't read before, which might go terribly wrong. But it's because of what you were saying earlier about women artists and the way there's sort of suppression of selves. And obviously it's not just women, it can be men in heterosexual relationships.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be heterosexual relationships, it can be people in relation to their parents or whatever, but it's about that suppression. So, okay. So just to be clear, Lucia is our protagonist, and yes, Ray is the husband. We know this already, don't we? Okay. Lucia had already found her calling, Ray her teacher. He needed her. She was devotedly dealing with all his letters, cleaning his brushes, mixing his colours, filling his sparky brain with ideas, reassuring and encouraging. The perfect assistant, honoured to be elected to serve the genius. He was amazingly torn with self-doubt and suffering, needing constantly to be buoyed up. He hated dealing with collectors, so she wooed them for him, making him great was their joint project. Whenever the reverberation of a new idea, the tuning fork thrill began in her chest, she'd squash it loyally. His career came first. Everyone fancied him, and he had his pick. He was posher, cleverer, better, and he allowed her, Lucia Brophy, to choose his blues and browns. Of course, she was wildly in love. Somebody had to take care of the children, and she wanted to, sort of, and every moment she could snatch when they went staggering into washing up tubs of acrylic or wailing about biscuits was required by Ray. No one could say Ray didn't help her, wasn't loving and supportive at the start. He'd explained, kindly, that she had much to learn about the world of art. It was just that by the time he began to regret it, it was too late.
Oh,
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
lovely, Charlotte.
Oh
It's
dear.
so sad. It's so sad because I found it fascinating. We don't see enough characters at sort of a midlife point, and Lucia is absolutely that midlife point of a woman, where her feelings about what she's done with her life to date are so negative, and she doesn't see anything good. Did you really, what did you seek to sort of highlight that, a woman in that sort of midlife point? Because she makes some jolly big decisions for herself in terms of how she lives her life at that point. I don't want to spoil it too much for anyone who hasn't read it.
No, well disguised. I think the thing is, it's not so much I wanted to write about someone at that point. She's a little bit older than me. It's more that she needed to be at that point to have been with Ray for so long that leaving him was kind of unimaginable. And her kids needed to be grown up but still need her. You know, there were lots of things that needed to sort of fit into place. But I think it is partly that she's at that age where it would be quite, well, not easy, but quite normal to say to yourself, I haven't got the energy. I can't change it now. It's done now.
Yeah.
And I suppose I wanted her to have a chance of another life.
Oh, I love that very much. I think that's, you know, I think that the chance of another life is so interesting, the way that you write about that. And her relationship with Priya is such an interesting one for me, because I find that in her own way, Priya is also very like Ray.
Yeah.
Yes.
That idea of control and manipulation is just very much like Ray, except we're seeing it in an entirely different context.
Yeah, and she's sexier. I think the thing
She's much sexier.
She's much, but then it would. I mean, Ray is really not a sexy man anymore. I think.
No,
the thing is,
I have this awful vision of him
His
in my
skinny
head.
calves.
skinny calves, well spotted. I think the thing is, I think you're right. I didn't intend Priya to be like Ray. It's more that she would have to be powerful and convincing and embracing risk in a way to make this happen. But I think the point is that, you know, she's not going to end up with Priya.
Yeah.
You know, Priya is the escape chute.
Yes. Yes.
She's the sort of that tipping point, I think, that
she has to be enough to make Lucia risk everything.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think Lucia is starting to have a little grain of self-salvation. So I'm hoping that she would, you know, maybe a weekend, but maybe they'll draw the line there. I hope.
I love that you give us that ambiguity too, that you leave it for us to decide how things might be. I heard that you chatted to the MP, Jess Phillips, just to get yourself. How did that all come out? Who else did you mine for inspiration?
Oh my God, it was so brilliant because I'm a big fan of hers, and I decided that Priya was going to be an MP, and I was thinking, who do I know who might know someone who might know someone? Couldn't think of anyone, and Jess Phillips crossed my mind, but because she's sort of my favourite, but obviously I don't know anyone in that world, and then I happened to meet someone who I'd met slightly before, who is in my world, who's a literary agent. And she mentioned in passing she was Jess Phillips' agent. So I went, oh my God.
That's it.
So yeah, it was incredible. I was so lucky that it happened that way. And Jess Phillips was even more wonderful than you'd imagine. Basically, I just got to sit in her office in Westminster and just ask her such personal questions, which is basically my idea of heaven with anyone. But it was like,
it comes back to the curiosity.
Oh my God, yes. No, all I really ever want in life is to be able to ask really personal questions. But Jess Phillips was just a god, and she was so brilliant about just answering them. And it's particularly brilliant when you're doing research, when you're asking someone the questions you need, when they understand why you're asking them. So then they'll start giving you extra things. So I interviewed all sorts of people for all my novels, particularly this one. But she was the best because she would just tell me, yes, all women MPs get, urinary infections because they have to be in whatever the house and not go and have a pee because they might miss. That's the kind of detail I'm born for, basically. True.
Necessary detail. It's necessary detail in
but
the
it's
book.
what it
necessary.
is. It's necessary. So it's interesting, but the best thing about it is it's the kind of thing that if that's you, but other people wouldn't know. So it's such a thrill when I find one of those little kind of treasures, because then I can say, okay, this is what it's like to be this person, which is what I'm trying to do all the time. It's the detail. It's always the detail, I think.
And that's what makes your characters.
I think so. I think it's I teach creative writing a bit as well, and I'm always saying to my students, I'm always saying two things. I'm always saying read Villette, and then the other thing I'm always saying is it's about the specific detail. It's the detail that only you would know, or only this character would notice, because that's as close as we can get to replicating what it's like to be another person, I think.
Yes.
And that's the bit that, when we talk about Forster and Only Connect, it's those things which people really do connect with. That idea, the self experienced in someone's writing is possibly the closest connection that you get to, an inanimate object, which is giving you a story.
Yeah, reading books is an incredibly weird thing, isn't it? Because you open it, you start reading, and you're in someone else's world, you're in someone else's mind, in their life. And I think that's why books save lives, because I think, in the broadest sense, that's why fiction does, because people see reflections of themselves, or they're just taken out of themselves. You get to forget about your life and enter the difficulties of someone else's life. And you're not alone. That however hard things are, other people go through hard things too. And I think that's, it's a kind of particular version of intimacy.
And do you ever write to escape?
What do you mean?
So we all escape into novels when we're reading them, but I think some writers, so if I was thinking of a story, I would probably write something that I would want to escape into, a world where I can forget my own world and create something entirely new and thrilling. Do you write to escape, to create something new, or is it that you're just fascinated by? So you've got this idea of two artists, and how does it work? That created your book. Is it more reality, or is it escape?
It's not escape. It's to understand reality.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's to understand myself and people I know, and why certain things happen in certain ways, and it's to bring things to life.
Yes.
It's not escapism for me at all, because I'm not interested in, I could be interested in anything. I'm very enthusiastic, but what I'm most interested in is the family and relationships. So I'm not escaping, I'm going deeper, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
You ask very good questions, you two, may I say.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Do.
did you? I mean, for me, the novel explores so much, but at its heart, the question that I kept pondering over and over again is what makes for happiness in relationships? How is it that, how do we navigate that? And whether that's child and parent, lovers, husband and wife, siblings, what does make for happiness? Did you explore, was that something that you were thinking of to get to the root of in the novel?
Sweetheart, I wish I knew.
Come on.
Okay. Focus. Wise novelist. Okay, I think a big part of what makes, certainly in couples, happiness is, it sounds basic, but I think it's by no means a given, is wanting the best for the other one. Is not seeing it as a competition. So Ray sees it as a competition.
Yeah.
It's not about wanting the best for the other person. It's about having enough of a sense of yourself that you don't feel threatened by whatever things happen for them, or what they look like, or who they're friends with. It's having a sort of benign ambition for them. So I suppose that's where it's gone wrong with these two. Well, one of the ways it's gone wrong is Ray sees Lucia's success as somehow affecting him, which obviously is just cobblers, but you know, he's pretty convinced. So what else do I think? I mean, obviously jokes and sex help, I think, in couples, not parents and children, that's bad. Illegal. But jokes maybe. But yeah, I mainly think it's that. It's, you know, it's lovely when you see those couples where one of them is just really proud of the other one.
Yes. It's quite rare, I'd say.
It is, I think. It is.
Sadly.
It is.
I mean, I think that's why this novel works so beautifully, because we can all pick out the characters that we know ourselves within it. You know, everybody knows a Leah who's a fixer, who's basically just trying to keep a lid on everything, because that is how she knows how to function. Yeah. And then we all know a Jess who is just trying to break free from it, but yet still feels trapped by so many things. Yeah. Including the awful Martin, who quite frankly,
Martin was really fun to write, though, I have to say.
He always just feels like such a wet lettuce. You just want to go, oh my goodness, stop it.
No, he's not wet. It's more he's pretty sure about himself and the world as he sees it. He's just really wrong.
Yes, Dickensian. Yeah. He's got that really slimy Dickensian feel to him. You just
oh wow, I hadn't thought of him like that. I think of him more as just one of those people where you think, have you not noticed? You're a bit of a knob. No, not that. Have you not noticed? Have you not noticed how you're coming across? Yes. And he's so excited by Ray and that world that he'll just do anything. Really.
And you can imagine that in the years to come, he will be a slightly toned down version of Ray. He's on his way to being a Ray, in the way that he wants to have control and.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think he's aiming to be a mixture of Leah and Ray, because he doesn't have the nastiness of Ray. But yes, exactly. The way he's always saying to Jess things like, well, we're happy, aren't we?
Yes. Oh, so
really, you can't really question that. You have to go, yes, we're happy, darling. You know, so I suppose part of it is I'm trying to show Jess a way out as well. I don't want Jess to do what Lucy has done,
and that's a lovely feeling when that happens, because it is good. You get more and more stressed as you read it, and come on, please, someone save themselves. You need to do this. Finally, Jess, thank you, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was very important that I gave certain characters ways out, you know, that I chucked down a rope ladder.
Yes,
but I also was very careful not to say it'll all be great.
And they all lived happily.
Everyone they got over Ray. Ray's just toast and they're all fine. Because it's not going to be like that, is it?
But do you think that's, going to say, do you think that's what the reader expects? We don't perhaps now expect a completely sewn up happy ending where everything's happy and lovely, but what we do expect is a way out.
I don't know, actually. I don't agree. I think it's true. It feels like that's how I think an ending should be. But I don't think, I mean, you could say that sort of psychological thrillers and crime fiction have trained us up to expect a massive twist.
Yeah.
And there wasn't going to be a massive twist in this. They weren't all suddenly going to be revealed to be, pigeons. But I did want there to, it'd be quite funny though. But no, it's more that I wanted it to be true to the possibilities of life, but not easy. It's not going to be easy extracting themselves from Ray, is it? I mean, let's be honest.
No.
My third novel, When We Were Bad, there was a woman who lived down the road who was blind and had listened to it on, sort of audiobook as it was then, but that was a kind of box of CDs. And whenever I saw her, she'd say, "So is there going to be a sequel? Can there be a sequel? I just need to know." And the thing is, I know what she meant because, I find it frustrating when I don't know, but it's delicious not knowing because that's what happens in real life. Some part of someone's story, don't you?
But I also think you give us the tools to work it out for ourselves.
I hope so.
Sometimes there are novels that I do get furious with when I reach the end, and essentially the author goes, "Well, it's up to you now. I'm not giving you anything.
Just make it up. I don't care."
Yeah, exactly. And you just think, well, you've just left me, essentially. I've been with you all this time and you've left me. Whereas I think you have a lovely, it's here, follow that path, understand the character, and you'll see what's happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you think that. I feel that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say, okay, yes, exactly. Here are some breadcrumbs.
Yes.
But I'm not going to be categorical because, but then I'm not one of those pretentious people who goes, who knows what will happen to them beyond the boundary? Let their memory take them, imagination, let them fly. Because, I did make them up, let's be honest.
Do you have a favourite?
Ooh, Lucia, I love Lucia. I feel Lucia lives in my heart, but I have a very soft spot for Patrick.
Oh, yeah.
He's my favourite.
Is he?
He's my favourite,
yes. I do love Patrick. I worry about him. But
I just loved his gentleness and I worried for him all the way through. And you just want him to be able to extract from the situation. And you know that actually of all of them, his extraction is probably the least likely.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I don't agree. I think Leah's is.
Yeah.
I don't think Leah will ever be able to transcend what Ray has made her want to be. Whereas I think Patrick, almost by kind of sort of breaking down and by leaving, escaping the sort of location of Ray, I think he can be, he's never going to be, the world's happiest and most stable person, but I think he's got a chance. I really do.
Oh, Charlotte, you've been an absolute joy to talk to. The novel is incredible. It's incredible. And I cannot wait for novel number 6. So please get on with that.
I'm trying.
Are you going to go back to family drama?
Well, I did think maybe this time I need to write about people who don't have, where their parents and siblings and maybe even couples aren't the point. And I tried. I just thought, I'm not interested.
Although, for those of you who don't know, Charlotte's written the most beautiful book on gardening. So, she can write, there are other things.
There are, but that's the only other thing.
Oh, Charlotte, you've been an absolute joy. The book, The Exhibitionist, is out now. It's absolutely incredible. I've got a lovely proof copy, but there's a beautiful house on the real. There we are. A beautiful house on the real life copy.
Thank you.
And it is extraordinary. I feel you were robbed not to get the Women's Prize. But it is a beautiful book of family dynamics, power, ego, and art. So absolutely sensational. Thank you so much, Charlotte. You've been an absolute joy. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was such an enjoyable experience with such perfect questions.
Oh, you're an angel.
Thank you so
Charlotte.
much.
We'll have you again.
Do. I'll write quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Oh, how wonderful. What an amazing
What
Are You
an
Sitting
evening.
Comfortably? Goodness
What an
me.
evening. Just to recap, for those of you who've joined us at the last possible bit, you can watch this again. It will be on my highlights and on the lovely Rebecca's highlights at My English Country Cottage. But we have talked tonight about Jennifer Higgie's The Mirror and the Palette. We have dived into the Light Years, Elizabeth Jane Howard's first Cazalet Chronicles novel. And we've been talking to the lovely Charlotte Mendelson, extremely talented, richly diverse and beautiful craft as a writer. The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelson. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, absolutely gorgeous to see you, my work partner in crime.
The other Rebecca. Thank you so much. They are amazing picks. Thank you for introducing me to Charlotte. I will now be reading all her other books, and
they're all good. My particular favourite is Almost Famous, which I would thoroughly recommend. But we will be sending out our book suggestions for further reads shortly.
Put them on there. Wonderful.
Lovely to see you.
You too.
Thank
Enjoy
you
your gin
everyone
and
for
it.
joining us. I will. I shall finish now.
Oh,
Good evening.
cheers. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.